Hi crafters, and welcome back today to my YouTube channel. My name is Debbie Watts and I am from Arakula Card Art. Arakula, very strange, it's Aboriginal, it means in front, and I feel that my work is in front. It's kind of quirky, and my symbol of a boomerang, how's that getting crafty? Well, it's simple really. A boomerang signifies coming back. So I hope you'll come back after this video and watch many of my future videos and tutorials going forward. The card we're going to make today is this stunning abstract ballerina dance, and this is using some oxides, some stamping techniques and a few pieces of cardstock. I'll go into the materials that you'll need in a second. This card's quite versatile today. I think you could do it for any occasions. So this is Elegant Nicole, and I'll tell you the maker of this card. I'm not sponsored by anything that I'm showing today in any way, and I've purchased all the materials myself. So as you can see, this beautiful card is not a purchase backing paper. It's a backing paper that I'm today going to show you how to create. So let's go and gather our materials together. Let's just go through the materials that we need for today's card. The base card is 18 by 18 centimeters. It's a 300 GSM white scored base card. I use 300 GSM because it gives some stability for your card. You don't really want them to flop on the mantelpiece. The second layer is a piece of black card. This is 200 GSM, and you want to cut it 17 by 17 centimeters square. The top layer of your card, this is where we're going to create the patterned paper and eventually end up stamping your image, is a watercolor card piece of paper. We're using watercolor card today because I'm going to be using some oxides. I'm going to create a paint from them, and the watercolor card will absorb that quite nicely. You want to cut this 16 by 16 centimeters. The other materials today, I've just simply got a selection of lovely oxides. I'm using Twisted Citron, Seedless Preserve, Mustard Seed, one of my all-time favourites, Picked Raspberry. I've got some Wild Honey, and the other ink I'm going to be using today is the VersaFine Clair. This is the black, and this is what I'm going to be using to stamp the image and also stamp my sentiment once we finish creating the background paper. For the other materials, I'm going to be using this gorgeous stamp by Crafteroo Designs. It's called Elegant Nicole, and as you can see, the image is just simply wonderful. I don't want a too fussy card for this. It's going to be a plain and simple card, which I'm hoping the recipient will be overwhelmed to receive. This is a polymer stamp, so you're going to need some acrylic block to affix your stamp on for stamping. The other materials you need, some white double-sided clear tape. This is just to layer your papers. Bit of water in a spritzer, and a card's not a card without a couple of gems. So I'm just going to be using these self-adhesive gems today, and you can use individual gems, but for ease I'm just going to use these which are already affixed to a sticky backing. You'll also need some wet wipes. My craft room is always having wet wipes. I can't live without them. And just to keep your surface nice and clean and dry, I use an old hand towel. As you can see, this has gone through the wash and has lots of pigment in the flannel, but it's a really good way to keep your work surface nice and clean once you've removed the inks from the wet wipe. Okay, the final item is sentiment. So you can really make this for whatever occasion you want. Today I'm going to be using, I think, Happy Birthday and for someone special. One thing I forgot to mention, which is the all-important paintbrush. I'm using quite a wide, fine, soft brush, paintbrush. And the oxide, rather than using this through a blender or a sponge, I'm going to be taking my craft mat. I've just simply got a glass cutting mat. You can have the craft sheets, works perfectly fine, just the same. Put your other materials to one side. You don't want to make an inky mess on those. So just taking the 16 by 16 centimeter watercolor piece of paper and a selection of oxides on your craft mat, simply squidge the ink so you actually create a ink pad. Take your water spritzer and simply just give it a couple of sprays. You don't want to completely saturate it, but you can make this as thinly coloured, finely coloured as you like. The more water you put onto your oxide, the more diluted the colour would be. You can start off with a light colour and then gradually keep adding the colour to make it more intense and deeper. So let's just go with a couple of spritz for the moment. And what you need to do is just take your wide paintbrush and, as if you're going to be painting, and it doesn't need to be specific exact, I'm just going to build up and create on my watercolour card some colour blocks. Now what you will have to do during this process is just keep creating that paint palette and keep spritzing and just keep building it up onto your card. This takes a little bit of time, but it really doesn't need to be neat and tidy. So just carry on. If you wanted to just use it direct and get a more intense colour, then you can do so. But it's easier just to spritz then your watercolour paper, and as you can see, it's starting to blend and cover that paper quite nicely. So don't make this exact. We're not really creating a pattern that's it's unique, and get those contrasting colours next to each other. So once you've finished with that, and we'll come back to using the pink in a while, use your dry towel to keep your surface dry and clean, and take the next colour. So again, just light pressure down to create that ink pad. Give it a spritz, and again spritz your paper, create that ink pad. And this is just, doesn't have to be the same size colour blocks. It's quite nice to have them. So there's going to be quite abstract background, I think, once we've finished. If you want that to be a more purer colour, remember, just take the direct colour onto your paper and just repeat that, wiping your brush in between the colour changes. You don't have to get it perfectly clean because you are creating like a blended background. Always make sure your lids are firmly back on to your ink pads, and with the Distress Oxides you get quite a distinctive click once you put the lid back on. Why do we do that? It makes sense just to keep them nice and sealed, and then they won't dry out. So between the colours, just keep your surface clean and dry. Seedless preserve. Let's go for a really deep colour with this. So I'm going to spray the paper. Take the colour and just apply it. And as you can see, it's quite a beautiful deep colour. And we can go over this a couple of times. Just build up that colour. Once we've finished creating this backhand, you will need to just blast this with a heat gun, but we'll come to that in a while. Just remember in between the colours to keep your work surface nice and clean and clear. Twisted Citron. Give it a spritz. Take some of the excess off the paintbrush. If you really did want to have pure colours in between, then just keep your paintbrush clear and we'll use a different paintbrush and wash it in between colours. So here goes with Twisted Citron. Big craft is all about making a mess, I think. That's one of my rules. If my craft room is not as messy, then I've not had a good crafting session. So let's just add this Twisted Citron to the bottom. This was Twisted Citron, but as you can see, I didn't quite have a good clean paintbrush. So let's just go back over this colour and bring some of the Twisted Citron colour back. As you can see, you've now got a lovely paper background. Okay, so just take your heat gun and just make sure your paper is completely dry. You'll need to do this before you stamp the next part, otherwise your inks will actually start to bleed slightly, so the paper does need to be dry. You can see I've got some ink on the back. That's really not a problem, we're not going to see that. Heat from underneath and the paper will start to straighten itself back out. It will be a bit curly, this is watercolour card, but we can actually just manipulate that, straighten it out, and don't forget this is going to be affixed to the other card that we're using today, so it really doesn't matter. As you can see, it's a bit bent, but it will flatten itself out in a while. So let's just get rid of this mess that we've created using our wet wipe. As you can see, I'm not using a new wet wipe for every single colour. Just really want to keep my work surface dry and clean. So let's just dry it off with my towel. This wet wipe, it actually creates quite a nice backing paper. So you can put this to one side to dry, and maybe you could die cut this, create flowers out of it, but never throw them away, because something I always like to do is upcycle or recycle products. So I'm going to be keeping that for later and maybe for one of my other videos in the future. So at this stage, once you've created your backing paper, we're going to take our image and fix it to your acrylic block. Acrylic blocks come in all sizes. You can get some grid lined ones. This is just a plain without any guidelines. This is a stamp, you don't really need the guidelines, but just make sure that all of the image actually fits on to the block itself. So you might need to put it at a different angle than the actual image. As you can see, this image is not quite straight on the block, because if I did, then the end wouldn't actually fit on the block. So because you can adjust the block once you're in the stamping process, just the only thing, real priority you have to make sure is make sure your stamp fits your block. Quite simple. Taking the VersaFine Clair, this is black, nice juicy ink, and the VersaFine Clair, I love using the VersaFine ink pads because it picks up all the tiny little details. So gently tap your stamp, making sure that all of the image is covered. And as you can see, she is looking absolutely fantastic. Not so my fingers, to be quite honest. So just make sure that you keep your fingers clear from your work at this stage. You don't want an accident. Some accidents are happy, but this one wouldn't be very much. So just making sure that's all covered. You don't need to completely push hard and squash your stamp. Just really want to make sure you've got good coverage. Put your ink back on and then you won't get any inky accents. You might be able to see in the inking process, I've actually picked up some ink on the polymer, and you don't really want that to come out on your card. So taking your wet wipe, just make sure any stray ink comes off before you actually stamp. So deciding which way up you want your pattern to be, then we're going to be stamping this. Again, you can see I've got some blacking on there, so that's an accident. Is it going to be a happy one? Just make sure your fingers are nice and clean and the edge of the block is nice and clean, so it's easily done. So what I'm going to have to do is just position this over, and just when I stamp, make sure I can cover that. So position where you want your image to be, and light, even pressure all over the image onto your paper. This stage, sometimes you want just in a hurry and you pull it off a bit too quickly and all of your image hasn't really taken onto your artwork. Fingers crossed, let's take a look. Wow, isn't that just beautiful? Didn't take long at all. And I think once we've got that made into the card with the sentiment on, she's going to be looking fantastic. If you're not going to be doing multiple cards, just take your wet wipe, clean your stamp before you put it away, and then it's ready to go for next time. Just give it a dry before you put it back into storage. So there we go. Almost there. The next stage of making this card is to stamp the sentiment. So taking a smaller acrylic block, we are using today this woodware craft collection. It's got quite a few sentiments on it, but as I said previously, you can make it any occasion you want really. So I'm going for happy birthday, and I'd also want to put on this for someone special. So at this stage, without inking or affixing these to your acrylic block, just really place them, hence why we keep them clean before we put them away. Place them over onto your artwork. It will help you get perspective of what it's going to look like at the end. You don't want it all centered. You might want to utilize the space. So think about where you want your sentiments to be and the layout of your card. So I think I'm going to put the happy birthday up the top, and for someone special down the bottom. Yeah, I think that's going to work today. So, taking your acrylic block, affixing your stamp. This acrylic block here has got some grid lines, and they come in very handy for positioning your stamp onto the block, and this will make sure that you get a clean and clear straight line. Well, that's kind of the theory anyway, so let's give that a go. So make sure it's nice and firmly stuck on to the block. Taking your black ink pad, lightly tap, covering the sentiment with ink. Again, you don't need firm pressure for this. Just light taps will be absolutely fine. Lid back on the ink, and just making sure this time that you wipe your fingers first before you actually start touching your wonderful paper. So I think that it's about there. So let's just light pressure all over the sentiment, all over your stamp. We'll just make sure that ink transfers nice and firmly and gives you a good even coverage of ink for your image. Gently lift. I think that black is looking really fantastic against the pink and the other bright colours that we're using today. You don't have to pick these colours, you can pick your own colours. Just work with whatever takes your fancy really. Just a reminder, keep your stamps clean and then they'll be ready to go next time. The worst thing you can do is if you want to make that card in a hurry, you go to use your stamps that you put away in a rush last time and they're dirty. So just pop them back on to the acrylic, the acetate storage that they come on, and that keeps them nice and protected as well. And it's all about looking after your products, and they'll be around for years to come, and they'll look after you. So let's take happy birthday. Now on this block, it just about fits. If I give it a wiggle around, but you can actually put it diagonally. Just make sure that all of the edges are affixed to your block, because the good thing about a clear acrylic block is you can see the stamp through. Just make sure it's nice and firm, not going to fall off, and light pressure ink, gentle taps, and just make sure it's nice and covered. Your lid on. Check your fingers. I always manage to get some of the black ink, and you really don't want, after all your hard work, that to go on your artwork. Just check where you want this before you go and stamp. Yeah, I think that's about right. So again, lower it down onto your work and light, even pressure. And that'll make sure that all of the ink on your stamp transfers beautifully onto your paper. And simply lift off. So, how long did that actually take us? Well, not really very long at all. Just really want to start putting this together and put some final finishing touches to it. Before we start to put the card together, just want to give this a quick blast with the heat gun, just to make sure that all of the ink has set and it's nice and dry, so that when we start to handle the inky parts of the card, you're not going to end up with black fingerprints all over your piece of work. A lot of people are tempted when they're using their heat gun to waft it like this. It's really not necessary, so just in gentle sweeping motions, move it across your paper. Just need maybe 20-25 seconds in total, really. Flip it over. Taking your double-sided tape, you just want to put on all four edges some tape, so it's going to affix nicely to your other layers. The good thing about using this white tape, the washi tape, is that you can actually tear it with your fingers. It's really easy to tear. Some tapes with the red backing, they have no tearability at all, and you do have to cut them with scissors, but this is a really sticky tape, mainly used for maybe sticking embellishments onto the card or putting heavier paper stock together, but we don't need that today. We're just using the 200 GSM and the watercolour card, so it's not heavy cardstock at all. Flip over your black card and do the same with that, affixing some double-sided tape to all four edges. So the three components then you've got are your white base card, scored, your black card that you're going to matte and layer. So you want to peel off the sticky backing paper, and it's quite easy to peel, and affix this to your base card, leaving a nice frame Make sure your card's going to open the right way, so you've got the orientation correct for how you want your card to be. How many cards have I actually put together and they've opened in the wrong direction? Yeah, so just make sure you've got a nice even border and just give it a rub. Flip it over and just rub it with your hand. So do the same with your image. And the reason why I've used the black card is once you fix this together, as you can see, using a black card and black ink for your images on your stamping and your sentiments, the black border really does make everything pop. So I think it's just beautiful how the colours pop, and then you get some clarity with the images and your sentiments. So with your final piece of artwork, peel off those sticky backings. Another good reason why you need clean fingers for this, because the last thing in the world at this stage you want to have is to turn it over and you have absolutely black fingerprints everywhere. So you'd kind of be devastated after doing all of this work. So again, position your layer so that you have a nice even border showing. Flip it over and just smooth it down. Didn't take long at all, did it really? And I think that's such a unique card. So whoever's going to get this is going to be the lucky one. So before I finish and pop this in the post today, I'm going to be taking these gems and probably, how many? Well, about 7 or 8, because they are quite tiny gems on the strip. So I just want to cut some of the strip. So count them. So I'm going to be taking 7 and just cut them into strips. 2 strips. We'll put these up the edge just to fill in some of the gaps really, because you've got beautiful sentiments in those corners, and I think it's just going to balance the card, just having a final bit of detail, making sure it's straight, or as straight as it can be. Give it a firm push and cut the next 7 gems. At this stage you want to make sure that you've got your 7 and you don't cut uneven. Won't really matter because they're not next to each other, but you just want it to look nice and even. So in the bottom corner, about the same margin width from the edge of your card, in a straight line, and fix to your paper. So that's our final card finish today. Hope you found this a good tutorial. I try to keep my tutorials nice and easy so that they're very simple to follow. And as you can see, we've created such a stunning, wonderful card today. I think, you know, once you've got your techniques right on this, you could actually do maybe a different backing paper, a more mottled effect, and not the block colour effect. Entirely up to you. It really, really is a card that you make your own. So thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed my tutorial. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again very, very soon. Thank you for watching, and just goodbye from me. And finally, happy crafting.